Good day, I am Angelica and together with Aguilar, Arcilia, Borjal, and Iran, we are Group 1 to present the results of our observation on children with challenging behaviors using the different tools on observing the child. The first tool that we use on monitoring challenging behavior is the anecdotal recording, which is a detailed descriptive narrative recording tool that is used when conducting a direct observation on a person. The events before, during, and after the actual behavior is recorded through this descriptive narration. The advantages of anecdotal recording first is it is objective, since what the observer will write will all provide important details on observing the child and not affected by feelings and opinions of the observer. Other people can also read the observation and this narration and make their own interpretations and will make the reader feels like they are on the moment of observing the child. Another advantage is that it is useful for evidence of events on behavior of the child, since the anecdotal recording will provide actual behavior of the child on a natural setup or natural setting. And last advantage is anecdotal recording is useful for development of the child to be able to identify their needs, their behavior, learning patterns, and can track progress and changes on their behavior and performance. While the disadvantages of the anecdotal recording is that the details of narrative record depends only on the memory of the observer, meaning some other details may not be recorded anymore since it is already forgotten by the observer. Another thing is that incidents written by observer can be interpreted on a different way if events are carelessly recorded and the observer becomes subjective. Anecdotal recording also consumes the time for giving attention on observing the child when writing down the observation. And lastly, anecdotal recording may be biased if the observer is careless on writing the events. On second day of observation, I observed Dylan on same time, 5 to 6 p.m., March 31, 2022, but different settings. We are on the kitchen with a table and 4 chairs. Dylan is sitting on her mother's lap while playing on his phone, and we are with his father, aunt, and mother. The mother put the phone away so Dylan can eat. At first, Dylan ignored it and looked for other toys to play on the floor. But at 5:47 p.m., he throws tantrums when he cannot use the phone. The mother ignored him, but the father get Dylan and give the phone that makes Dylan calm. On the third day of observation, first day of April, same time of observing Dylan, I observed him on the same setting just like on the first day, on his bedroom, with the playroom on the other side that is divided by a plastic barricade. The room is designed with a soft wall sticker on the lower part and random wall stickers on the upper part of the room. And we are with his mother and his babysitter. At 5:07 p.m., Dylan starts throwing tantrums triggered when he lost sight of his mother. The tantrums continue and only stop when his mother arrived again. On fourth day, April 2, I still observed Dylan on the same time while playing outside together with his mother, aunt, and other children with their parents. So there are 7 children and 8 parents, including Dylan's mother and auntie. The subdivision is not crowded and there are There were no cars and other vehicles passing by for the whole observation I conducted. At 5:40 p.m., Dylan threw tantrums triggered by not riding a three-wheeler bike of his playmate. His tantrum lasts for 5 minutes and then the mother decided to go inside the house, but Dylan continued crying inside the house until 5:57 p.m. On the last day of observation, April 3, 2022, same time, 5 to 6 p.m., and the setting of observation is the living room. As you can see here, there is one couch and there are alphabet chart and animal chart on the wall. The television is playing Cocomelon loudly, but Dylan is focused on his phone, and we are together with his babysitter only. Dylan is with his babysitter only teaching him alphabet using the alphabet chart hanging on the lower part of the wall. At 5:25 p.m., Dylan hit the babysitter using his hand and the floor when they are on letter O of the alphabet and just watch Cocomelon. The babysitter tried to refocus Dylan on reading the alphabet chart, but he will just hit her and watch Cocomelon again.
Have ABC recording. It is useful when you need to monitor and record information about a particular behavior of a child. So we have different advantages and disadvantages. First, we have the advantages. It allows an observer to record descriptive information about a student in a systematic and organized way. Next, it is easier to use. Next, it helps to pinpoint important events in a given situation. Next, we have disadvantages. First, it can be difficult to see patterns quickly. Next, the data may need to be summarized. Next, it takes time and patience. Next, the observer may not always see or key into antecedents due to distractions or temporal distance. And lastly, it is difficult to always categorize events into ABC format. So this is what I observed on April 1, 2022 to April 5, 2022. So the name of the child is Zach. I used the ABC recording. The first day on April 1, 2022 at 10 a.m. to 10:10 a.m. The antecedent was parents wants to get the bag of chips from the child. The behavior shown was shouting and refusing to give the bag of chips. The consequences, parents told the child he will never get to eat chips again. On the second day on April 2, 2022 at 5:30 to 5:40 p.m., the antecedent is parents wants to get the new toy from the child and the behavior shown was crying and insisting to open his new toy. The consequences is the parents gave another toy. On the third day on April 3, 2022 at 10:30 to 10:40 a.m., the parents wants to get the cell phone from the child. The behavior shown was sulking and crying. The consequence, the parents makes the child stand in the corner. On the fourth day, on April 4, 2022 at 4 to 4:10 p.m., the parents wants the child to answer his module. The behavior shown was crying and refusing to do his module. So the consequence, the parents decided to give a reward. On the last day, on April 5, 2022 at 6:10 to 6:20 p.m., the antecedent was parents wants the child to answer his assignment. The behavior shown was screaming no and refusing to do the assignment. The consequence, the parents warned the child that he is not allowed to watch TV until it's done.
Duration recording, when to use. Duration recording is used when you're keeping track of how long a behavior lasts by noting when it begins and ends. It is the responsibility of the observer to record the time in minutes and convert it into percentage. We have here the advantage and disadvantage of duration recording. First, we have the advantages. We can see the behavior from low to moderate. We can see how long the behavior lasts in minutes. We can see the duration. We can also see the frequency of the behavior. For the disadvantages, it needs computation. It pertains to the percentage of the duration recording and should be minded in time as the behavior begins and ends, needs more attention while observing in terms of the time and the behavior occurs. Observation using duration recording, we have the name of the child, male, date is from March 27 up to March 31, 2022. Time is 1 to 2 p.m., which is 1 hour. Behavior, tantrums that shows different signs of anger, clenched fist, yelling, crying, refuse to follow directions, pinching, and inappropriate gestures. Observer, Rubiani Iran. We have here the date, the duration of behavior in minutes, and percentage of time. So from the date, we have from March 27, 7.4 for the duration of behavior in minutes, and 12% in percentage of the time. So in order for us to get the percentage of the time, we just need to get the duration of the behavior in minutes and divide it into 60 and multiply it into 100. So from March 27, 7.4 divided by 60 multiplied by 100 is 12%. March 28, 3.13 divided by 60 multiplied by 100 is 5%. March 29, 1.14 divided by 60 multiplied by 100 is 2%. March 30, 2.28 divided by 60 multiplied by 100 is 4%. And last one, March 31, 1.37 divided by 60 multiplied by 100 is 2%.
Latency recording. It measures the amount of time lapse between the antecedent or the teacher or directive and when the student begins to perform a specific behavior. And this type of data collection is appropriate for the behavior that follows a command, directive, or the distinct stimulation. And for the example of that is if the teacher is expected the student to be seated and be ready for the class within 10 seconds of the bell, it will be recording how many minutes or seconds the student will be react. Here is the advantages and disadvantages of latency. On the advantages, we have it can be used to diagnose and prevent the problem behavior of the child. Because sometimes there is a scenario that the child cannot process immediately the command that given to him or her. We could know the reason why there is a problem or a barrier why he cannot perform the command given to him or her. And by that, we can be able to diagnose and know the problem of the child. Next is to understand what are the reasons what they are late. It is applicable to the child who are always late to the class. Next is the disadvantages of latency. It requires a measurement device like a stopwatch. Next is difficult to observe because the child might feel uncomfortable while doing the observation because sometimes the child who has a know that he or she is under observation, the child might know what to do. For example, they cannot perform the natural way what are they doing. Here is the table for using a latency recording. Name of the child is NN. Date March 30, 2022 to April 3, 2022. Time is 5:30 p.m. or maximum of 30 minutes. Behavior procrastinator or next is the total observation time. We had a 25 minutes and 30 seconds. And the observer is yours truly, Justin Chris Emberhal.
Event recording, when to use. Event recording is used to document the number of times a particular behavior occurs. The observer is in charge of keeping track of the tally mark as well as recording in the time period which the behavior was witnessed. We have the advantages and disadvantages of event recording. First is the advantages. We can measure the number of behaviors, easy to record, easy to convert, example in graph, easy to tally, less descriptive, focus on specific behavior only. Disadvantages requires behavior that is easy to count, can miss the interesting events, can miss the behavior if too many happen at once, lack of details from a narrative. Using event recording, we have the name of the child, Kyle. Date is March 31 up to April 4, 2022. Time is 4 to 5 p.m., which is 1 hour. Behavior, we have the violent behavior. Behavior definition is every time the child does a violent behavior to anyone near his environment. Observer, Ruby and Iran. So we have the date, time, tally every time the behavior occurs, and total number of times the behavior occurred. So from March 31, we have 10 total number of the times that the behavior occurred. April 1, we have 3. Same goes with the April 2, we have 3. And April 3, we have 1 total number. And April 4, last one, we have the 2 total numbers of the behavior occurs.
Momentary time sampling is a sample of the defined behavior in the exact instant time that you're taking a data. The observer will define the interval of time. Let's say we have a 5 minutes and look up at the end of the interval. At the 5-minute mark, the observer will record whatever the behavior is occurring or is not occurring, or the learner is not engaged or not engaged. Taking this kind of data will give you a number of intervals in which behavior occurred. Then you are looking to either decrease or increase the number of intervals that the behavior is occurring in. The advantage and disadvantage of momentary time sampling. Here in advantage, we have is continuous attending is not required. It is for the child who will be observed, because the entire time it is not required to be attentive in the entire 5 minutes observing. Next is the disadvantage, can be over and underestimated the data, because sometimes there is an observer who want to finish earlier or wanted to more extended time to be observed, and the 5 minutes is underestimated or over. Here is the table using momentary time sampling. Name of the child is JC. Date is March 30 to April 3, 2022. Time is under 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. or exactly 2 hours. Behavior that observed is easily distracted or difficulty on concentrating. Total observation time is 5 minutes per day for 5 days, which is total of 25 minutes. Length of each interval is 20 seconds, and the observer is yours truly, Justin Tris M. Borjal. Every 20 seconds, we will be observe the child, which is either he is on task or off task. The circle means she or he is on task, and X means he or she is not on task. March 30 has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on task, and the rest is off task. March 31 has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on task, and the rest is off task. April 1 has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on task, and the rest is off task. April 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on task, and the rest is off task. And the last day has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on task, and the rest is off task.
Now we have the partial interval time sampling. Partial interval time sampling is used to measure a behavior that happens quickly. The observer can provide a timer that determines the right tracking of the time intervals. And once the behavior occurs on each interval, you can just put an X, and if it did not happen, you can write an O letter. And you can use this sampling presuming that the behavior has an inconsistent duration. Here are the advantages and disadvantages of partial interval time sampling. First of the advantages, it records a behavior that is difficult to identify when will it begins or ends. Next, it is easy to tally and short but detailed. Also, the intervals here are fixed and observation can take a short period of time. In the disadvantages, it requires attentive mindset in tracking the interval. Last is it is difficult to focus when recording data in the right timing. Here are the observation of using partial interval time sampling. The name of the child was Dylan and it was conducted on March 26, 2022 until March 30, 2022. The total observation time is 10 minutes and the length of each interval is 1 minute. So the behavior of the child was throwing things, for example, bottle, pillow, and phone. So the X and the O will determine if the behavior occurs or not. The X symbolizes that the behavior occurs on that interval. So for March 26, day 1, total times behavior occurred 6. And then March 27, day 2, 7 times. March 28, day 3, 4 times. Next, March 29, day 4, 4 times also. And last, March 30, day 5, the total behavior occurred 6 times. The advantages and disadvantages of partial interval time sampling. First of the advantages, it records a behavior that is difficult to identify when will it begins or ends. Next, it is easy to tally and short but detailed. Also, the intervals here are fixed and observation can take a short period of time. In the disadvantages, it requires attentive mindset in tracking the interval. Last is it is difficult to focus when recording data in the right timing. Here are the observation of using partial interval time sampling. The name of the child was Dylan and it was conducted on March 26, 2022 until March 30, 2022. The total observation time is 10 minutes and the length of each interval is 1 minute. So the behavior of the child was throwing things, for example, bottle, pillow, and phone. So the X and the O will determine if the behavior occurs or not. The X symbolizes that the behavior occurs on that interval. So for March 26, day 1, total times behavior occurred 6. And then March 27, day 2, 7 times. March 28, day 3, 4 times. Next, March 29, day 4, 4 times also. And last, March 30, day 5, the total behavior occurred 6 times. Last is the whole interval time sampling. Whole interval time sampling can be used when the observer is concerned in measuring ongoing behavior. Just like the partial interval behavior that it is hard to tell when it begins, you can use whole interval. But in here, when a behavior occurs in the whole interval, you can put an X. But if a behavior occurs yet it stops at any time of the interval, you can place an O in the tally. Some examples of the behavior you can measure are walking, reading, or doing a homework. Advantages and disadvantage are the following. First of the advantages is the behavior is observable. Next, it is easy to tally, short but detailed, intervals are fixed, and observation can take a short period of time. And the disadvantages must have a strong focus the entire time. Next is the observer must track the intervals while observing the behavior. Here are the tallies of the whole interval time sampling. And the name of the child was Dwayne. The date conducted March 30, 2022 until April 3, 2022. Total observation time 20 minutes and length of each interval 2 minutes. The behavior is spontaneous talking while doing activities. For example, reading, writing, answering a paper task. And here are the tally, the date, the interval, and the total times behavior occurred. On day 1, March 30, 7 times the behavior was occurred. And then day 2, March 31, 4 times. Day 3, April 1, 5 times. And day 4, April 2, 7 times. And last, day 5, April 3, 8 times. So in here, the whole interval and the partial interval differs depends on the occurrence of the behavior. When we say partial interval, if the behavior occurs, you can put an X, but in the whole interval, the behavior must occur on the whole interval.